Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art and culture, and this is Billboard Breakdown. So one thing that I've noticed is that Billboard Breakdown tend to attract the most conversation and arguments of my material, mostly because it refers to the mainstream and songs that everybody knows and hears from day to day. So when I looked at the majority of our new arrivals and our new top 10 entry, I just almost threw up my hands here. I mean, Meghan Trainor's back in the top 10, and Iggy Azalea is back on the Hot 100. I should just tell you all to have fun, keep it as simple as possible, get up and just walk away. Especially considering I've had, let's say, controversial opinions about both artists that's gonna leave nobody happy. But let's be honest, you all expected a show this week regardless. It's not like there's much else to talk about. So let's start off with our top 10, shall we? Of course, work by Ariana and Drake remains atop the charts at number 1 thanks to ruling streaming, big YouTube, and held steady on airplay even as the sales continue to dip. It's holding its own, but for how long against the rising tide of 7 years by Lucas Graham? Rose up to number 2 on gains across the board, especially on airplay. At this point, might just be a matter of time. It pushed back Love Yourself by Justin Bieber at number 3, which did rally a bit on YouTube and still is the peak of airplay, but it's unsteady at the top and sales are falling off. Its days are numbered there. Then we have My House by Flowride of all things gaining a spot to number 4, which sure, it did get some streaming and airplay boost and sales have always been strong, but not quite enough to rise up the weaknesses of another song. And that be Stressed Out by 21 Pilots slipping down to number 5. Yes, it recovered a bit on streaming and YouTube, but the sales are not great and airplay is now falling quick enough to be a real concern there. This leaves it vulnerable to a challenge for our new top 10 arrival, No by Meghan Trainor at number 6. Look, I get why people like the song. I've accepted it's not for me thanks to incoherent messaging and a mediocre stab at late 90s pop sounds I've heard done better, but the general public doesn't really seem to agree with me, says it absolutely ruled sales, spent the week climbing up airplay and streaming. But hey, if it means that trends in late 90s pop like a refocus on melody and tightness can return to the spotlight, I'll treat that as a net positive and move on to Me, Myself, and I by Jeezy and Baby Rexha, which just isn't going anywhere. Seriously, it's been at number 7 for weeks now, and even despite losing streaming, only okay sales, and slowing airplay gains, it's just not moving. What is shifting is Pillow Talk by Zayn, which collapsed beneath it to number 8 thanks to a slip on YouTube and a sudden slowdown of airplay gains. Yeah, it still has huge streaming and decent sales, but expect the real revival to be triggered next week after the album smashes through. And then we have Cake by the Ocean by DNCE holding steady at number 9. Honestly, I'm not sure where it's gonna go. Slipping streaming, decent enough sales, but it gained a lot in airplay this week. And you have to wonder whether or not that will be enough to keep it where it is. And finally, we've got the game that put a smile on my face immediately. I Took a Pill in Ibiza by Mike Posner returning to the top 10. And look, I don't have any illusions that this song is going to be huge. The sales only decent, airplay's taking a while to gain traction. It's mostly reliant on streaming at this point, but it actually got a bit of YouTube now. Who knows, it could get bigger. I would like to see this become a hit. It's kind of a great song. And now on the opposite note are losers and dropouts. Only a few in the latter category, with both We Went by Randy Houser and Break On Me by Keith Urban showing country's shift of the seasons, along with the long overdue exit of Can't Feel My Face by The Weeknd. But for our losers, well, might as well characterize them as good to great songs, just not holding enough traction to do better on the charts. Youth by Troye Sivan falling off its sales boost to 36 from last week. When We Were Young by Adele continuing to underperform at 50. Sugar by Robin Schultz and Francesco Yates stalling out at 63. And Something in the Way You Move by Ellie Goulding flopping hard to 87. Talk about disappointing. I really like that song. Then there's Country, which continue to have a busy week as it rotates Heartbeat by Carrie Underwood towards the exit early at 75, along with shoving Came Here to Forget by Blake Shelton down to 61, and Beautiful Drug by the Zac Brown Band to 72, although in those cases more likely because they aren't really country songs if we're being honest here. Beyond that, okay, the rest of the pop getting shoved out the door kinda deserves it, with Stand By You by Rachel Platten probably being the best of them and just being kinda generic at number 77. But I'm not exactly complaining that Adventure of a Lifetime by Coldplay continues downhill to 76, or Try Everything by Shakira skids down to 86, or Like I Would by Zayn sputtered out completely after its debut last week to 93. But really, that's the most action any debut from last week had. Hell, if we look at our gains, the only real pickup from last week was Make Me Like You by Gwen Stefani rising up to 80. Beyond that, man, compared to our losers, our gains are an underwhelming bunch, especially going into the spring here. On the one hand, you got Think of You by Chris Young and Cassidy Pope at 57 for some new country that's actually pretty good, but it's not good that it comes with I Like the Sound of That by Rascal Flatts rising up to 56 from an album that dropped nearly 2 years ago. Then there's Panda by Designer continuing to exploit how so many people think he's future, rising up 21, and Justin Bieber actually gaining some traction with Company, which is actually thankfully pretty tolerable. But the odd, low-key nature of the gains continues with the surprising boost for Lost Boy by Ruth B. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not a bad song, but as a piano ballad, there just wasn't really a lot to it, at least for me. Then there's Cheap Thrills by Sia and Sean Paul going up to 71. I mean, I get it, given how popular Rihanna is right now, but it's still far from a good song here. And finally, there's Don't Let Me Down by the Chainsmokers featuring Daya. No complaints here. Good song, although I'm a little startled how much momentum it picked up to going up to 31, especially as I'm not especially convinced that drop is particularly impressive, even if, yeah, the bridge, final chorus does hit with some impact. And now, since we got such a sparse and small list of new arrivals and we got no re-entries, might as well do another world hit. Now, the one thing I've seen discussed in a number of requests is to discuss Faded, the worldwide hit from Norwegian DJ Alan Walker. But honestly, the vocals from Island Solheim is my favorite part of that song. The synth tone just does not click with me at all. So instead, I'm gonna switch back to my home turf to find something building some momentum that really should be bigger down south. That's right, it's the Canadian Hot 100, which, as you all know, is always better. And I know I can't deny it, and I know that I can't deny it. Yeah, you knock me off my feet, and I know I can't deny it, and I know that I can't deny it. You know, it's a little weird shouting out other YouTube talent on a show like this, unless, of course, they absolutely deserve it. And Dan Talevski definitely doesn't knock me off my feet. Now, I've highlighted Dan Talevski before when I've covered all the great Canadian songs that the States missed back in 2015 for the hit Guilty as Sin, and you know, I'll probably do something similar for this summer when things start to slow down a bit. So let me restate that Guilty as Sin is a goddamn great song, anchoring itself in such incredibly tight percussion and synths that lets the acoustic guitar flesh out more of the melody in the background, and his voice just coasts over it effortlessly. A similar set of strengths play in Knock Me Off My Feet. Incredibly tight synthesizers and percussion with a great bass groove, and Dan Talevski's liquid vocals just cascading over the mix. Sure, the song doesn't quite have the lyrical edge that Guilty as Sin had, probably my favorite of the two songs, but that doesn't mean this just isn't a great, incredibly tight pop song. I'm looking forward to this track getting some major traction on Canadian charts this year, mark my words, because this song, pretty damn good. Check it out. And now back to our regularly scheduled programming, starting off with number 98, Body by Dreezy featuring Jeremih.
Said I'm about to catch your body in here, baby. Oh yeah, it's going down. I'm about to catch your body. Oh yeah, no stopping now. I'm about to catch your body.
Okay, bit of backstory here. If you remember Common's album from 2014, Nobody's Smiling, you might recognize this Chicago MC has been building a fair bit of hype thanks to an EP she dropped last Christmas. Now, I remember liking her more authoritative style and bars, and I was curious how this would click as a lead-off single for her upcoming debut album. And yet, I shouldn't be surprised that her lead-off single would be a sex jam with Jeremih delivering one of his least impressive vocal performances in a while. Now, in a sense, that kind of could work. Dreezy's half-sung flow does place her to the forefront. She's better than him on this song, especially how the rougher backing vocals really support her, and she's got no outright whack lines. Hell, with her taking out the Mike Tyson reference to having that knockout, it's honestly more tolerable than when many male references uses that same thing to Mike Tyson. If I take issue with the song, probably comes in the beat switch up for Jeremih's final verse. Swamping out an already pretty bleak synth and trap beat with bass that can't feel like a discount DJ Mustard product with a pretty bare bones melody. But in short, the song, it's fine enough, and Dreezy reminds me a little bit of Janae Aiko with her quiet confidence, and I like that, but I'm not quite sure it's gonna be the huge hit that she'll need to really gain traction. Just saying. Number 43, Be Alright by Ariana Grande. So this was the song that was paired with Dangerous Woman as the new rollout for Ariana's upcoming album, and man, I like this a lot less. And I don't blame Ariana entirely for this. The writing for the song about hoping that relationship will work out, it's a good fit for her optimism and her voice. And the vocal layering actually sounds really quite pretty and emulating Mariah Carey's style. What really lets me down is the instrumentation and the production. Seriously, for as good as the groove was on Dangerous Woman, for this to sound so dinky and cheap, it's inexcusable. The chintzy marimba that leads into with a muted piano and clicking beat before we get the warping synth and bass hits that just feel so thin. That's where we get the incoherent pitch-shifted vocals slathered throughout the chorus that serve no purpose at all. And given how this song just kind of wheedles out, it feels more unfinished than anything else. Again, not precisely bad, but man, talk about a step down. Ariana, you're better than this. And finally, number 42, Team by Iggy Azalea.
I feed on lemons in the limelight. They say I'm full, lost my appetite. Hell no. Keep on pushing like a dealer. Hell no. Keep on shooting Reggie Miller. Hell no. Gon' give them all the finger. You gotta say the soul right, call it hands in my.
I don't hate Iggy Azalea, and believe me, she's really easy to hate. She's really popular to hate too. She's arrogant and obnoxious, her content can be just as empty as many of her male peers, and there's an exaggerated stench of phoniness that hangs around her fake southern drawl that's pretty hard to stomach. And yet, if I'm being brutally honest with myself, I don't hate her debut album, The New Classic. I probably overrated it when I covered it 2 years ago, but she does have good flows and some bars that actually connect with some decent references. She can pick out some good production, and she does have personality and stage presence. And besides, if we're gonna take rappers to task for being arrogant, obnoxious, and phony, they might as well throw in a big chunk of mainstream hip-hop. Iggy Azalea is probably the most obvious target, given her outright refusal to apologize or own up to any of her phoniness, which might as well be the tagline of her sophomore lead-off single, where the only team she's got is herself. And man, that might have been a mistake, because while I respect her bravado and her bars connect more often than you would expect on the verses, which is about 60% of the time, Iggy Azalea has no business handling a hook like this, as the pitch correction struggles to keep her on key as her nasal tone blares through everything, and not in a good way. It doesn't sound good. And who told her it was a good idea to not only just double down on the phony accent, but then hop on the Migos flow for the post-chorus and a thick Jamaican patois as well in the second verse? They do nothing to make her delivery sound good or remotely authentic. Iggy is at her best when her flow has swagger and momentum. And if you want something that puts a poleaxe to momentum, well, it's this production. I had the more ragged metallic synth that first might work against the thicker percussion, but then when you push in the twinkling elements and the pitch-shifted vocals and the flushing sound that remind me of the worst power to Bauer's Harlem Shake, it sounds overmixed and clumsy and completely undercutting the bombast that this song is trying to achieve. With only the trap bridge coming close to having any sort of groove, but the most telling line of the song came with the Kylie Jenner reference in the second verse. Decent bit of wordplay, but completely transparent as a desperate play for relevance now that hers is running out. Good thing that you're comfortable being on your own team, Iggy Azalea, because with catastrophes like this song, you might want to get used to it. So that was our week, and wow, can I just pick Dan Talevski's World Hit as the best song here? Because it's head and shoulders above everything else. Team by Iggy Azalea is just running away with the worst. But if I'm gonna be fair here, the music was probably the least objectionable on Body by Dreezy and Jeremih, and the rhymes are probably the most on point. Side note, it also had a Kardashian reference, but Dreezy's bars at least had more groove than Iggy Azalea's did. It didn't have production that was trying to be abrasive and succeeded far more than she could have possibly intended or hoped for. At this point, I'm just hoping for a busier week on the Hot 100. Law of averages means we got at least more of a chance of quality in one or two songs. But beyond that, until then, I am Mark. You're watching Billboard Breakdown on Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.